3 German shepherds was crying from a dark tunnel. What baby did next left everyone in tears. What happened that October afternoon would shock an entire community and change countless lives forever. The sound of 3 dogs crying from a dark tunnel would lead to a discovery that no one saw coming. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The rain started falling on Riverside Township just after lunch that Tuesday. It wasn't the gentle autumn shower everyone expected. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, bringing sheets of water that hammered against windows and turned the quiet streets into rushing streams. David Miller stood at his kitchen window, watching the storm grow stronger by the minute. His coffee had gone cold in his hand, but he didn't notice. Something about this storm felt different, wrong somehow. "Daddy, the dogs are crying," a small voice said behind him. David turned to see his 5-year-old son Noah standing in the doorway. The boy's blue eyes were wide with concern, and his small hands twisted the bottom of his dinosaur shirt. Noah had always been different from other children. While kids his age played with toy cars and watched cartoons, Noah spent hours sitting quietly in the backyard, seemingly listening to sounds only he could hear. "What dogs, buddy?" David asked, setting down his mug and kneeling to Noah's level. "The ones in the tunnel. They're scared and sad. They need help." Sarah Miller walked into the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and flour dusted her apron from the cookies she'd been baking. "What's this about dogs?" she asked, glancing between her husband and son. "Noah says he hears dogs crying," David explained, trying to keep the skepticism out of his voice. They'd been through this before. Last month, Noah had insisted a bird was heard in their chimney. They'd dismissed it until 3 days later, when they found an injured sparrow that had fallen down and gotten stuck. The month before that, he'd known their neighbor's cat was sick, before even the owner realized it. "There aren't any dogs outside in this weather, sweetie," Sarah said gently. "Maybe it's just the wind. It can make strange sounds during storms." Noah shook his head firmly. "No, Mama. It's 3 dogs. Big ones. They're in the dark place by the old tracks. They're crying because something bad happened." David and Sarah exchanged a look over their son's head. The old railway tracks had been abandoned for 20 years, ever since the new highway was built. Near those tracks was a large drainage tunnel that local teenagers sometimes used as a hangout spot, though the recent rains would have made it dangerous. "The tunnel is flooded by now," David said. "No animal would go in there during a storm like this." Noah's lower lip trembled. "But they're there. I can feel them. They're so sad, Daddy. They're protecting something. All important." Sarah knelt beside her son, taking his small hands in hers. "Noah, honey, even if there were dogs there, it's too dangerous to go out in this storm. The streets are flooding." "But they need help now?" Noah's voice rose with urgency. "Please, we have to go. Something really bad will happen if we don't help them." Thunder crashed overhead, making all 3 of them jump. The lights flickered once, twice, then stayed on. David looked at his wife, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in her eyes. Noah had never been wrong about these things before, but taking their 5-year-old out in this weather seemed crazy. "How about this?" David suggested. "When the storm calms down a bit, we'll drive by the tunnel and check. Okay?" Noah shook his head vigorously. "No, Daddy. Now, they need help now." Before either parent could respond, Noah turned and ran toward the front door. David caught him just as his small hand reached for the doorknob. "Noah, stop! You can't go out there. Let me go." Noah struggled in his father's arms, tears streaming down his face. "They're dying. The old man is dying. The dogs are trying to save him, but they can't do it alone." David froze. "What old man?" Noah stopped struggling, his small body trembling. "The sad man who lives in the dark. The dogs love him. They stay with him because no one else does. But he's sick now. Really sick. The dogs are crying because they don't know how to help him." Sarah grabbed her raincoat from the hook by the door. "David, get the car keys." "Sarah, you can't be serious. Our son has never lied to us, never been wrong about these things. If there's even a chance someone needs help." She pulled on her coat with determined movements. "Get the keys." David stared at his wife and son for a long moment. Then he grabbed his jacket. "Fine, but we're just driving by to look. We're not getting out of the car unless it's absolutely necessary." They bundled Noah into his rain jacket and boots. Though he was so eager to leave, he barely stood still long enough for Sarah to zip him up. The moment they opened the door, the sound of the storm hit them full force. Rain slashed sideways across the porch, and the wind bent the trees in their yard at dangerous angles. The drive to the old railway tracks normally took 10 minutes. In this weather, it took 20. David drove slowly, carefully navigating through streets that had turned into shallow rivers. Noah sat in his booster seat in the back, his face pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass. "Turn here," Noah said suddenly, pointing to a narrow access road David had never noticed before. "That's not the way to the tunnel," David said. "Yes, it is. It's the back way. The dogs showed me." David glanced at Sarah, who nodded. He turned onto the muddy road, his car's tires slipping slightly before finding traction. The road led them behind an abandoned warehouse, past a chain-link fence with a hole torn in it, and finally to a clearing, where the old railway tracks crossed. There, like a dark mouth in the hillside, was the drainage tunnel. It was larger than David remembered, at least 8 feet in diameter, designed to channel floodwater away from the tracks. Water was indeed flowing into it, but not as much as he'd expected. The tunnel mouth was still partially clear. "There!" Noah pointed excitedly. "I told you!" "Look." At first, David saw nothing but shadows and rain. Then lightning flashed, illuminating the tunnel entrance for a brief moment. 3 large shapes huddled just inside the tunnel mouth, German shepherds just as Noah had said. Even from the car, David could see they were agitated, pacing back and forth, occasionally disappearing deeper into the tunnel before returning to the entrance. "My God," Sarah breathed. "He was right." "We need to help them," Noah said, already unbuckling his seatbelt. "No," David said firmly. "You stay in the car. I'll go check it out." "David, be careful," Sarah said, grabbing his arm. "Those dogs might be dangerous. They could be strays or wild." David squeezed her hand. "I'll be fine. Keep the engine running." He stepped out into the storm, immediately drenched despite his raincoat. The wind nearly knocked him over as he made his way toward the tunnel. As he got closer, he could hear it. The dogs were indeed crying, a mournful sound that made his chest tight. The first dog noticed him when he was about 20 feet away. It was massive, probably 90 pounds of muscle and fur, its coat dark with rain. Instead of growling or charging, the dog did something unexpected. It ran toward him, then back to the tunnel, then toward him again, clearly trying to lead him somewhere. "You want me to follow you?" David asked, feeling slightly foolish talking to a dog. The German shepherd barked once and ran back to the tunnel entrance where the other 2 dogs waited. One was slightly smaller, with a lighter coat, while the third was jet black, except for brown markings on its legs and face. All 3 stood at the tunnel entrance, looking at David, then turning to look deeper into the darkness. David pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam penetrated maybe 15 feet into the tunnel before the darkness swallowed it. The tunnel floor was covered with about 6 inches of moving water, but the sides were still relatively dry. And there, about 30 feet in, David saw something that made his heart stop. A figure was slumped against the tunnel wall, unmoving. David ran back to the car. "There's someone in there. Call 911. Sarah was already pulling out her phone, while David grabbed the emergency flashlight from the trunk. Noah had his face pressed against the window, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Is the sad man okay?" Noah asked. "I'm going to help him," David promised. "You stay here with Mommy." "No!" Noah's voice was fierce. "I need to come. The dogs want me to come. They told me in my dreams. They said I'm the only one who can help." "Noah, absolutely not." But Noah had already opened his door and slipped out before Sarah could grab him. He ran toward the tunnel with surprising speed for such a small child. David cursed and ran after him, but Noah had already reached the dogs. Instead of attacking or even barking, the 3 German shepherds surrounded Noah protectively, their tails wagging slightly. "See, Daddy? They know me. I'm supposed to be here." David wanted to argue, to drag his son back to the car, but something in the dogs' behavior stopped him. They were calm now, no longer crying, as if Noah's presence had soothed them. The largest dog, the one that had approached David first, gently took the sleeve of Noah's raincoat in its mouth and began leading him into the tunnel. "Wait," David said, but Noah was already walking beside the dog, his small hand resting on its wet fur. David had no choice but to follow, his flashlight beam dancing across the tunnel walls. The sound of flowing water echoed off the concrete, mixing with the distant rumble of thunder. The other two dogs flanked them, their bodies pressed close, as if protecting Noah from unseen dangers. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, the air grew colder and stale. David's flashlight finally illuminated the figure clearly. It was an elderly man, probably in his 70s, dressed in layers of worn clothing. His face was pale, his breathing shallow and labored. A military-style backpack sat beside him, along with what looked like a carefully wrapped bundle of documents in plastic. Noah knelt beside the man without hesitation, his small hand reaching out to touch the man's weathered face. "Mr. Thomas," he said softly. "Mr. Thomas, wake up. We're here to help you." David was about to ask how Noah knew the man's name when the elderly man's eyes fluttered open. They were gray, clouded with pain and confusion, but they focused on Noah with surprising clarity. "Danny?" the man whispered, his voice hoarse. "Danny, is that you?" "No, mister." "Thomas, I'm Noah, but I'm here to help you, just like Danny would have wanted." Tears began rolling down the old man's weathered cheeks. "The dogs, they stayed with me. Good dogs, such good dogs." The largest German shepherd moved to Thomas's side, resting its massive head on the man's leg. David noticed a worn collar around its neck, with a tag that read, "Scout." The lighter-colored dog had a collar too, Bella, and the black ones read, "Duke." "We need to get him out of here," David said, pulling out his phone to check on the 911 call, but there was no signal this deep in the tunnel. "The water's rising," Noah said, and David realized with alarm that he was right. The water that had been 6 inches was now closer to 8, and the current was getting stronger. "Can you walk?" David asked Thomas. The old man tried to push himself up, but immediately collapsed back against the wall, gasping in pain. "My leg, I think it's broken. Fell yesterday, or was it today? I can't remember." David's mind raced. They needed to get Thomas out, but he couldn't carry him alone, especially not through rising water. "Noah, run back to the car. Tell Mommy to call for help." "They won't come in time," Noah said with that eerie certainty he sometimes displayed. "The water will be too high. We have to do this ourselves." "Noah, I can't carry him alone." "The dogs will help," Noah interrupted. He turned to Scout, looking directly into the dog's intelligent eyes. "Scout, we need to make a stretcher. Like you learned in the army, remember?" To David's amazement, Scout barked once and ran deeper into the tunnel. Bella and Duke stayed with them, positioning themselves on either side of Thomas as if standing guard. "How did you know?" "I told you, Daddy." The dogs talked to me, not with words, but with feelings and pictures in my head. Scout is getting something to help us. Before David could process this, Scout returned, dragging a large piece of canvas that looked like it might have once been a tent. It was old and musty, but still strong. "Help me spread it out," Noah instructed his father, with an authority that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old. David found himself following his son's lead, spreading the canvas beside Thomas. Together, with the dogs seeming to understand exactly what was needed, they carefully moved the injured man onto the makeshift stretcher. Thomas cried out in pain, but the dogs immediately pressed close to him, offering comfort. "Scout and Duke will take the front," Noah said. "Bella will guide from the side. Daddy, you take the back." "Noah, the dogs can't!" But Scout and Duke had already positioned themselves at the front of the canvas, each gripping a corner in their powerful jaws. When David lifted his end, the dogs began pulling in perfect synchronization, their powerful bodies working together to move Thomas toward the tunnel entrance. The water was now past Noah's knees, the current threatening to knock him over. David wanted to tell him to run ahead, but Noah was walking beside Thomas, his small hand holding the old man's, whispering reassurances. "You're going to be okay, mister." "Thomas, the dogs won't let anything happen to you. They love you too much." "They're all I have left," Thomas mumbled, his voice weak but clear. "After Danny died, after I lost everything, they found me. 3 strays, just like me. We took care of each other. The journey to the tunnel entrance felt like it took hours, though it was probably only minutes. The water continued rising, and David could hear Sarah shouting from the car, though he couldn't make out her words over the storm. Just as they reached the tunnel mouth, emergency vehicles arrived, their lights cutting through the rain. Paramedics rushed toward them, but the dogs wouldn't let them near Thomas at first, forming a protective circle around him. "It's okay," Noah said to the dogs. "They're here to help. Let them help." One by one, the dogs stepped. Back, though, they stayed close, their eyes never leaving Thomas as the paramedics began working on him. "Severe hypothermia," one paramedic said. "Dehydration, possible pneumonia, and yes, his leg is definitely broken. We need to get him to the hospital immediately." As they loaded Thomas onto a proper stretcher, he reached out weakly for Noah. "The dogs, please, they can't go to the shelter. They'll die there. They need to stay together. We'll take care of them," Noah promised without hesitation. "Won't we, Daddy?" David looked at his son, then at the 3 German shepherds who had risked their lives to protect a homeless man in a flooding tunnel. "Yes," he heard himself say. "We'll take care of them." Thomas's eyes filled with tears again. "The papers," he said urgently. "In my pack. Important. Military documents. They need to go to the right people." One of the paramedics retrieved the backpack and the wrapped bundle, treating them with surprising care. "We'll make sure these stay with your belongings, sir." As they loaded Thomas into the ambulance, the 3 dogs tried to follow. When they were stopped, they began howling, a sound so mournful it made everyone stop. "Can they ride with him?" Noah asked the paramedics. "Please, they've never been apart." The lead paramedic looked at the dogs, then at the small boy who had somehow helped orchestrate a rescue that should have been impossible. "It's against regulations." "Please," Noah said again, and there was something in his voice, in his eyes, that made the paramedic pause. "Just this once," he said finally. "They can ride in the back, but they have to stay calm." The moment the dogs were allowed in the ambulance, they settled quietly around Thomas's stretcher, their presence seeming to calm the old man's labored breathing. Sarah ran to David and Noah, wrapping them both in fierce hugs. "Don't you ever scare me like that again," she said, her voice shaking with relief and residual fear. "We had to help him, Mama," Noah said simply. "The dogs knew I would come. They've been waiting for me." As they drove to the hospital, following the ambulance, David couldn't stop thinking about what he'd witnessed. The way the dogs had worked together, the way they'd seemed to understand Noah, the way his 5-year-old son had known exactly what to do. None of it made logical sense. "How did you know his name was Thomas?" David asked, glancing at Noah in the rearview mirror. Noah was quiet for a moment, his face thoughtful. "I've been dreaming about him and the dogs for weeks. Every night I see them in the tunnel. Scout shows me pictures in my dreams. Mister. Thomas when he was young, wearing a soldier uniform. His son Danny, who looked just like me. The day Danny died in a car accident while Mr. Thomas was overseas. How Mr. Thomas lost his home, his family, everything. And how Scout, Bella, and Duke found him and became his family." Sarah turned in her seat to look at their son. "Honey, how is that possible?" "I don't know," Noah said honestly, "but Scout says some connections are special. He says Mr. Thomas needed us, and we needed them. It's like we were supposed to find each other." At the hospital, they weren't allowed in the emergency room, but the dogs were permitted to wait in a special area after a veterinary technician on staff checked them over. Despite their time in the tunnel, all 3 dogs were in remarkably good health, just hungry and tired. Noah sat on the floor with them, Scout's head in his lap, Bella pressed against his side, and Duke lying protectively behind him. David watched his son with these 3 large dogs, amazed at how natural it looked, as if they'd always been together. "Excuse me," a woman's voice said. David looked up to see a nurse standing nearby. "Are you the family that brought in Thomas Walker?" "We found him," David said. "Is he okay?" The nurse's expression was serious. "He's stable, but critical. The hypothermia and pneumonia are serious concerns at his age. He's asking for the boy and the dogs." "Can we see him?" Noah asked, already getting to his feet. "Normally, we don't allow, but given the circumstances and the fact that he has no other visitors, the doctor has made an exception. You can have 5 minutes." They followed the nurse through sterile hallways to a room in the ICU. Thomas looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, connected to various machines and IVS, but his eyes were open and alert, and they lit up when he saw Noah and the dogs. The dogs approached the bed slowly, carefully, as if they understood the gravity of the situation. Scout rested his chin on the edge of the bed, while Bella and Duke sat on either side, their eyes fixed on Thomas's face. "You came?" Thomas whispered. "Of course we came," Noah said, taking the old man's hand. "We're family now." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "I haven't had family in 10 years. Not since." He stopped, overcome with emotion. "Since Danny," Noah finished gently. "Scout told me. I'm sorry about your son." Thomas stared at the boy in wonder. "How could you know about Danny?" "The same way I knew you needed help," Noah said simply. "Sometimes we just know things. Important things." A doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Walker, I need to discuss your condition with you. Perhaps the visitors could—" "They stay," Thomas said with surprising firmness. "Whatever you have to say, they can hear. They're the closest thing to family I have." The doctor looked uncertain but proceeded. "Mr. Walker, your condition is serious. The pneumonia has advanced significantly, and your heart is showing signs of strain. We'll do everything we can, but I need to ask, do you have any next of kin we should contact? Any arrangements that need to be made?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his hand reaching out to touch Scout's head. "There's no one. Hasn't been for years. Just me and the dogs." "What about the documents?" David asked, remembering the bundle Thomas had been so concerned about. "You said they were important." Thomas nodded weakly. "My military records, proof of service. There's something else too, something I've been guarding for 40 years. Intelligence from Vietnam that was never properly filed. People have been looking for it. Bad people. That's why I stayed hidden in the tunnel. The dogs, they knew. They protected me." The doctor made notes on his clipboard. "We'll ensure your belongings are secured, Mr. Walker. Is there anyone you'd like us to notify about your condition? Perhaps someone from the Veterans Administration?" Before Thomas could answer, Noah spoke up. "He's coming home with us when he gets better." Everyone in the room turned to stare at the 5-year-old boy. "Noah," Sarah started gently, "that's very sweet, but—" "No," Noah said firmly. "He can't go back to the tunnel. And the dogs need him. He needs them. We have the extra room above the garage. We can make it nice for him." David wanted to explain why this was impossible, why they couldn't just take in a homeless stranger, but something in his son's eyes stopped him. The same certainty that had led them to the tunnel, that had saved Thomas's life. "We'll discuss it," David said carefully. "First, let's focus on getting Mr. Thomas healthy." Over the next 3 days, Thomas's condition worsened before it began to improve. The Miller family took turns visiting, and the hospital made an unprecedented exception to allow the dogs short visits twice a day. Each time the dogs entered his room, Thomas's vital signs improved noticeably, a fact that didn't go unnoticed by the medical staff. During one visit, while Thomas slept, Noah sat drawing pictures in a notebook Sarah had brought him. David glanced over and was startled by what he saw. The drawings were incredibly detailed for a 5-year-old, scenes of a younger Thomas in military uniform, a small boy who must have been Danny, and the 3 dogs in various settings. "Where did you learn to draw like that?" David asked. Noah looked up, confused. "I'm not drawing them. I'm just copying what Scout shows me in my head." That evening, as they prepared to leave, a man in a dark suit appeared in the hospital corridor. He was tall, thin, with sharp features and cold eyes that made David instinctively step closer to his family. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice smooth but somehow menacing. "I understand you're the family that found Thomas Walker." "Yes," David said cautiously. "And you are?" "Agent Harrison, Department of Defense." He showed them an official-looking badge so quickly David couldn't read it properly. "I understand, Mr. Walker had some documents with him. I'll need to collect those." "I think you'll need to speak with the hospital about that," David said. "They have his belongings." Agent Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. "Those documents are classified government property. They need to be returned immediately." "Then I'm sure you can go through proper channels," Sarah said, her teacher's voice carrying an authority that surprised David. "The hospital has procedures for releasing patient belongings." The agent stared at them for a long moment, his gaze lingering on Noah, who had moved closer to the dogs. Scout, Bella, and Duke had all stood up, their bodies tense, a low growl building in Scout's throat. "Interesting dogs," Harrison said. "Military trained, by the look of them." "They belong to Walker?" "They belong to themselves," Noah said clearly. "And they don't like you." Harrison's cold smile didn't reach his eyes. "Smart boy. Tell me, did Walker say anything about the documents, about what's in them?" "He's been very ill," David said, pulling Noah behind him. "He hasn't said much of anything." "I see." Harrison pulled out a business card. "When he's feeling better, have him call me. It's important for national security that those documents are handled properly." After he left, David immediately found Thomas's doctor. There was a man here claiming to be from the Department of Defense, asking about Mr. Walker's belongings. The doctor frowned. "We haven't released any information about Mr. Walker to anyone. How did he even know he was here? That night, David did something he hadn't done in years. He called his brother Michael, who worked in military intelligence. "Mike, I need you to check on something for me. A guy named Agent Harrison, supposedly DOD, asking about Vietnam-era classified documents." There was a pause on the other end. "Harrison? Tall, thin, looks like a mortician?" "That's him." "David, listen carefully. That man is not DOD, not anymore. He was discharged 5 years ago for selling classified information. If he's sniffing around, it means someone's paying him to retrieve something. Whatever your friend has, it's valuable to the wrong people." David felt a chill run down his spine. "What should we do?" "I'll make some calls. Real DOD will want to know about this. In the meantime, make sure those documents stay secure, and Harrison stays away from your friend." The next morning brought unexpected news. Thomas's condition had improved dramatically overnight. The pneumonia was responding to treatment, and his heart had stabilized. The doctor called it remarkable, but Noah just smiled and said, "The dogs visited him in his dreams last night. They told him he couldn't leave yet, but the good news was overshadowed by a new problem. A woman arrived at the hospital, claiming to be Thomas's niece, demanding to see him and take possession of his belongings. "I'm his only living relative," she insisted to the hospital administrator. "I have rights." The woman, who introduced herself as Victoria Walker, was in her 40s, well-dressed, and accompanied by a lawyer. She had documents that seemed to prove her relationship to Thomas. When they brought her to Thomas's room, his reaction was immediate and negative. "Get her out," he said weakly, but firmly. "She's not my niece. My brother never had children." "Uncle Thomas," Victoria said with false sweetness. "You're confused. It's me, Victoria, Donald's daughter." "Donald died in 1975, Thomas said. "In Vietnam, with me. I held him as he died. He was 19 years old and never married." Victoria's mask slipped for a moment, revealing anger beneath. "You're obviously suffering from dementia. I'll need to petition for guardianship." "Over my dead body," Thomas said with surprising strength. The dogs, who had been brought for their morning visit, began growling. Scout positioned himself between Victoria and Thomas's bed, his teeth bared. "Control those animals," Victoria demanded. "They're dangerous." "They're good judges of character," Noah said calmly, "and they know you're lying." Victoria turned on the boy. "Children should be seen and not heard." "This child saved my life," Thomas said. "Which is more than you've ever done. I don't know who you really are or what Harrison promised you, but you're not getting anything from me." Victoria's face went pale at the mention of Harrison. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't," David said. "Just like you don't know that Harrison was discharged from the DOD for selling secrets." The lawyer whispered urgently in Victoria's ear. She straightened, composing herself. "This isn't over. I'll be back with a court order." After she left, Thomas struggled to sit up, agitation clear on his face. "The documents. They need to be protected. There's information about MIAs, about men left behind. Harrison was part of the cover-up, if he gets those papers." "They're safe," David assured him. "The hospital has them in their vault, and my brother has contacted the real Department of Defense. They're sending someone today." Thomas relaxed slightly but still looked worried. "There's something else. Something I haven't told anyone. The dogs, they belong to my unit. Scout was my partner's dog. saved 6 lives in combat. Bella belonged to our medic, could detect injuries before symptoms showed. And Duke was our lieutenant's dog, trained to detect danger. They're war heroes, Noah said with awe. They are, Thomas confirmed. After the war, after I lost Danny, I found them at a shelter, about to be put down. They were old military dogs no one wanted. I couldn't let that happen. We've been together ever since, 12 years now. But that would make them, Sarah did quick math. They'd be at least 15 years old. They don't act that old. Thomas smiled weakly. They're special. Always have been. It's like they were waiting for something, or someone. He looked at Noah. I think they were waiting for you, son. That afternoon, 2 legitimate DoD officials arrived, verified by David's brother. They carefully reviewed Thomas's documents, their expressions growing more serious with each page. Mr. Walker, one of them said finally, these documents contain information about 17 MIAs whose locations were known but never reported. This is evidence of a major cover-up. You've been protecting this for 40 years? Thomas nodded. I promised the families would know the truth someday. I just didn't know how to make it happen without putting myself in danger. You won't be in danger anymore, the official assured him. This information will be properly investigated and the families will be notified. You've done a great service, Mr. Walker. What about Harrison? David asked. Already in custody, the second official said, along with his associate who was posing as Mr. Walker's niece. They've been selling military secrets for years. This was their biggest score, or would have been. As the officials left with copies of the documents, the originals would remain with Thomas's insurance. Thomas reached for Noah's hand. You saved more than just my life, young man. You helped me complete a mission I've been carrying for decades. Noah squeezed his hand gently. Scout says you're not done yet. You still have important things to do. Over the next week, Thomas continued to improve. The story of his rescue had somehow reached local media, though the Miller family tried to keep Noah out of the spotlight. The community response was overwhelming. The local VFW offered to pay Thomas's medical bills. A contractor volunteered to renovate the apartment above the Miller's garage. Donations poured in for the Tunnel Hero and his dogs. But not everyone was happy about the attention. On the 10th day of Thomas's hospitalization, David received a disturbing phone call. Mr. Miller, this is Jim Crawford from Animal Control. We've received a complaint about 3 unlicensed German Shepherds at your address. We'll need to come collect them. What? Who made the complaint? I'm not at liberty to say. But if the dogs aren't properly licensed and vaccinated, they'll need to be impounded. David's mind raced. The dogs had been staying at their house while Thomas recovered, and in all the chaos, they hadn't thought about licenses or paperwork. They're not our dogs, David explained. They belong to Thomas Walker, the veteran who, if Mr. Walker is hospitalized and unable to care for them, they need to be surrendered to the shelter. No, David said firmly. Give us 24 hours. We'll get everything sorted. He immediately called the veterinarian who had examined the dogs at the hospital. Dr. Martinez was sympathetic but honest. The dogs are healthy, but they have no recent vaccination records. Without proof of rabies vaccines, Animal Control can legally take them. And at their age, if they go to the shelter, she didn't need to finish. Senior dogs, especially large ones, rarely got adopted. David found Noah in the backyard with the 3 dogs. His son was throwing a ball, but the dogs seemed more interested in staying close to him than playing fetch. They knew something was wrong. Noah, we have a problem, David said, gently explaining the situation. Noah's face went pale. They can't take them. The dogs will die without Mr. Thomas, and he'll die without them. We're going to figure something out, David promised, though he had no idea how. That evening, Noah did something that surprised everyone. He asked to speak at the next city council meeting, which happened to be the following night. Sarah tried to explain that children didn't usually address the council, but Noah was insistent. The dogs need me to speak for them. They can't do it themselves. The next night, the small council chamber was unexpectedly packed. Word had spread about the boy who'd saved the veteran, and people were curious. Noah stood at the podium, having to stand on a box to reach the microphone. Scout, Bella, and Duke sat beside him, perfectly behaved. My name is Noah Miller, he began, his young voice clear and steady. I'm 5 years old. These are Scout, Bella, and Duke. They're heroes, but nobody knows it. He told their story, not just the rescue in the tunnel, but what Thomas had shared about their military service, their years of loyalty, their protection of a man everyone else had forgotten. Mr. Thomas lost his son when he was protecting our country. These dogs lost their handlers in the war. They found each other because they were all alone and sad. They became a family. Now some people want to take the dogs away because of paperwork. That's not right. An elderly woman in the audience stood up. The boy's right. My husband was in Vietnam. He never came back. If these dogs served our country, they deserve better than a shelter. Others began standing, voicing agreement. The council members looked uncomfortable. It's not about what's right, one councilman said. It's about the law. Without proper documentation? Then change the law, someone shouted from the back. Noah continued. Mr. Thomas protected important papers for 40 years. Papers that will help families find out what happened to their soldiers. He did the right thing even when it was dangerous. Can't we do the right thing when it's just about paperwork? The council chair, an older woman named Margaret Thompson, had tears in her eyes. Young man, you make a compelling case, but we can't just ignore regulations. She was interrupted by a commotion at the door. Thomas Walker entered in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse, with Dr. Martinez beside him. He was pale and obviously weak, but his eyes were determined. Mr. Walker, the council chair said, surprised. You shouldn't be here. You're still recovering. I had to come, Thomas said, his voice raspy but firm. These dogs aren't just pets. They're certified military service animals. I have their papers in a safety deposit box I haven't been able to access. Dr. Martinez has agreed to provide emergency vaccinations. All I'm asking for is time. How much time? The chair asked. 72 hours, Thomas said. Please, they've served their country. They've saved lives. Don't let bureaucracy be their end. The council huddled in discussion. Finally, the chair spoke. Motion to grant a 72-hour emergency exemption for the 3 service dogs in question. The motion passed unanimously. The crowd erupted in applause. Noah ran to Thomas, hugging him carefully. The dogs surrounded them both, tails wagging, as if they understood they'd been saved. But the challenges weren't over. Thomas was released from the hospital 2 days later, but he had nowhere to go. The tunnel was no longer an option, and no facility would accept him with 3 dogs. It's time, Sarah said to David that night. The apartment is ready. We have the space. Sarah, taking in 3 dogs is one thing, but an elderly man with health issues, who saved classified documents for 40 years, who those dogs would die for, who our son has some inexplicable connection to. Sarah took her husband's hands. David, when has Noah ever been wrong about these things? The next morning, they brought Thomas home. The apartment above the garage had been transformed by community volunteers. It was small but comfortable, with a proper bed, a kitchenette, and most importantly, space for 3 dog beds. Thomas stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face. I haven't had a real home in 10 years. You do now, Noah said, taking his hand. The first few weeks were an adjustment for everyone. Thomas was still weak, requiring daily physical therapy and regular medical checkups. The dogs never left his side, except when Noah was home from school. Then they seemed torn, wanting to be with both their old companion and the boy who understood them in ways no one could explain. It was during this time that Noah's abilities became more pronounced. He would know when Thomas was having a bad day before anyone else. He could predict when Scout was about to alert to Thomas's blood pressure dropping. He knew Bella had detected an infection in Thomas's leg before any symptoms appeared. How do you know these things? Sarah asked her son one evening. Noah thought about it seriously. It's like the dogs show me pictures in my mind, not with their eyes, but with their feelings. Scout shows me memories of the war, of the friends they lost. Bella shows me when something's wrong in someone's body, like she can see inside. And Duke shows me danger before it happens. As if to prove his point, Noah suddenly stood up. Someone's coming. Someone bad. Seconds later, Duke began barking, followed by Scout and Bella. A car had pulled into their driveway, a black sedan with tinted windows. David looked out the window and recognized the driver immediately. Harrison. But he was supposed to be in custody. Call 911, David told Sarah, then went outside to confront the man. Harrison stepped out of the car, his movements casual but his eyes alert. "Mr. Miller, I heard Thomas is staying with you now." "You're supposed to be in jail," David said. Harrison smiled coldly. "Released on bail. My lawyer is very good. I'm here with a proposition." "We're not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." Harrison pulled out an envelope, thick with cash. $50,000. All I want is 5 minutes alone with Thomas, just to talk. Get off my property. 100,000. Harrison's mask of civility was slipping. "You have a son to think about. College isn't cheap." Before David could respond, Scout appeared, having somehow gotten out of the house. The dog positioned himself between David and Harrison, growling low and dangerous. "Call off the dog," Harrison said, taking a step back. "He's not my dog to call off," David said, "and you need to leave, now." Harrison's hand moved toward his jacket, but Duke and Bella had joined Scout, all 3 dogs forming a barrier. In the distance, police sirens wailed. "This isn't over," Harrison snarled, getting back in his car. "Thomas has more documents. I know he does, and I'll get them one way or another." He drove off just as the police arrived. David filed a report, but technically Harrison hadn't done anything illegal. He'd made an offer and left when asked. That night, Thomas called a family meeting in his apartment. "Harrison's right. I do have more documents, things I've been hiding for even longer." He pulled out a worn leather journal from inside his mattress. "This contains names, dates, and locations of POWs who were left behind. Not just in Vietnam, but in other conflicts too. Harrison was part of a group that profited from keeping them missing. If this information gets out, powerful people will be exposed. Then we need to give it to the authorities," Sarah said. "I tried, years ago. The people I contacted ended up dead or disappeared. That's when I went into hiding." Thomas looked at Noah. "But now I have something I didn't have before. Protection." "The dogs?" David asked. "Not just the dogs." Thomas smiled at Noah. "I have someone who can hear what others can't. Someone the dogs trust completely." "Noah, what do Scout and the others tell you about Harrison?" Noah closed his eyes, concentrating. "Scout shows me darkness around him. Many faces of sad families. Bella shows me poison in his heart. And Duke." Noah's eyes snapped open. "Duke shows me he's coming back. Tonight, with others." Thomas nodded grimly. "Then we need to be ready." David immediately called his brother Michael. "We need help. Now." Michael didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in 3 hours with a team. Keep everyone inside and together." As darkness fell over the neighborhood, an unusual tension filled the Miller house. The dogs paced restlessly, their ears constantly swiveling toward different sounds only they could hear. Noah sat close to Thomas in the living room, both of them eerily calm, while Sarah prepared coffee with shaking hands. "They're afraid," Noah said suddenly, his small hand resting on Scout's head. "Not the dogs. The bad men. They're afraid of what Mr. Thomas knows." Thomas pulled out his journal again, running his weathered fingers over its worn cover. 43 names are in here. 43 soldiers who were left behind, whose families were told they were dead. Harrison and his group made millions selling false information about POW camps while making sure the real location stayed hidden. "But why?" Sarah asked, bringing in a tray of cups. "Why would anyone do that?" "Money," Thomas said simply. "The government paid contractors to search for POWs. Harrison's group would provide just enough false leads to keep the contracts flowing, but never enough to actually find anyone. Some of those men might still be alive, held in labor camps or prisons. Their families deserve to know the truth." Duke suddenly stood, his body rigid, staring at the back door. Noah's eyes went wide. "They're here, not at the front. They're coming through the yard." David grabbed a baseball bat, his heart pounding. "Sarah, take Noah upstairs." "No," Noah said firmly. "The dogs need me here, and you need the dogs." Before anyone could argue, Scout moved to the back door, Bella to the front, and Duke positioned himself at the stairs. They were creating a defensive perimeter, just as they had been trained to do decades ago in jungle warfare. A soft scratching came from the back door. Not knocking, someone was trying to pick the lock. Thomas struggled to his feet, his face pale but determined. "David, there's something else in my journal. Not just names, account numbers. Harrison and his group have been hiding money in offshore accounts. Millions stolen from the government, from families searching for their loved ones." The scratching stopped. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, the dogs growling seemed to come from everywhere at once. Noah's small voice cut through the tension. 3 men at the back, 2 at the front, 1 on the roof. "The roof?" David whispered, but his question was answered by the sound of footsteps above them. Sarah grabbed her phone to call 911, but there was no signal. The landline was dead too. "They're using a jammer," Thomas said. "Military grade. Harrison still has connections." A window shattered upstairs. Duke was already moving, racing up the steps with surprising speed for his age. They heard a man scream, then the sound of someone falling. "Duke found the roof man," Noah reported calmly, as if watching it on television. "He's running away." The back door suddenly burst open. 3 men in dark clothing rushed in, but Scout was ready. The massive German shepherd launched himself at the first intruder. 90 pounds of trained muscle and fury. The man went down hard, his weapon skittering across the floor. The second man raised what looked like a tranquilizer gun, but Bella was faster. She didn't attack directly, but bit his ankle, causing him to stumble. David swung his bat, connecting solidly with the man's shoulder. The third man, smaller than the others, tried to grab Noah. That was his mistake. All 3 dogs converged on him instantly, not biting, but surrounding him, their teeth bared, growling in perfect unison. The man froze, terror clear in his eyes even through his ski mask. "Call them off," he begged. "Please, call them off." "I can't," Noah said simply. "They don't like people who hurt children." The front door crashed open. 2 more men entered, but they stopped short when they saw their companions on the floor and the dogs holding the third man prisoner. "Where's Harrison?" Thomas demanded, standing despite his obvious pain. One of the men at the front door pulled off his mask. It was Harrison himself, his cold eyes now filled with rage. "You've caused me a lot of trouble, old man." "You caused yourself trouble when you betrayed your country," Thomas shot back. Harrison pulled out a gun, a real one, not a tranquilizer. "Give me the journal," and everyone walks away. "You're not getting anything," David said, moving protectively in front of his family. Harrison smiled coldly. "I don't need to get it. I just need to make sure no one else does." He shifted his aim toward Thomas. What happened next occurred so fast that later, no one could agree on the exact sequence. Noah shouted something. Scout leaped. Harrison fired, but the bullet never reached Thomas, because Duke had already been moving, throwing his body between Thomas and the gun. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the floor with a heavy thud, blood immediately pooling beneath him. "Duke!" Noah screamed, running to the fallen dog. The distraction was all Scout and Bella needed. Scout hit Harrison high, knocking the gun from his hand, while Bella went low, taking his legs out from under him. He went down hard, his head hitting the coffee table with a sickening crack. The other intruders tried to run, but the sound of sirens filled the air. Michael had arrived with federal agents surrounding the house. Within minutes, all 6 intruders were in custody, including Harrison, who was unconscious but breathing. But Noah wasn't paying attention to any of that. He was kneeling beside Duke, his small hands pressed against the wound, tears streaming down his face. "Don't die, Duke. Please don't die. Mr. Thomas needs you. We all need you." Duke's breathing was labored, his eyes glazing with pain, but his tail thumped once against the floor when Noah spoke. Dr. Martinez arrived with the federal agents, having been called by Michael. She immediately went to work on Duke, her experienced hands moving quickly. The bullet went through clean. No major organs hit, but he's lost a lot of blood. We need to get him to my clinic now. They loaded Duke into Dr. Martinez's van, Noah refusing to leave his side. Scout and Bella jumped in too, pressing close to their injured companion. Thomas insisted on going as well, despite his own shaky condition. At the veterinary clinic, Dr. Martinez worked through the night. Duke needed surgery to repair the damaged muscle and a blood transfusion. The problem was finding donor blood for such a large dog. "Scout and Bella," Noah said suddenly. "They can give blood. They're the same type. They shared blood in the war when Duke was hurt before." Dr. Martinez looked skeptical. "How could you possibly know that?" "Duke is showing me," Noah said, his eyes distant. In the jungle. Duke was hurt by a trap. Scout gave blood. The medic, Bella's handler, he knew how to do it. Thomas nodded slowly. He's right. I remember now. Duke was injured in 71. We did a field transfusion. These 3 dogs have compatible blood types. It's one reason they were assigned to the same unit. Dr. Martinez ran the tests. Incredibly, Noah was right. Both Scout and Bella were compatible donors. As Duke underwent surgery, his 2 companions gave blood, lying calmly on examination tables, as if they understood exactly what was happening. The surgery took 4 hours. When Dr. Martinez finally emerged, exhausted but smiling, she said, "He's going to make it. It's miraculous, really. A dog his age surviving this kind of trauma. These aren't ordinary dogs." "No," Thomas said quietly, "they're not." While Duke recovered, the federal investigation into Harrison's network exploded into national news. The journal Thomas had protected for decades led to the arrest of 17 people, including 2 high-ranking Pentagon officials. More importantly, it provided closure for dozens of families who had spent decades wondering about their missing loved ones. 3 weeks later, Duke was able to come home. He moved slowly, carefully, but his eyes were bright and alert. The bullet wound had left him with a permanent limp, but it didn't seem to diminish his protective instincts. If anything, the experience had bonded all 3 dogs even more closely to the Miller family. It was around this time that Noah's abilities began to manifest in new ways. He started drawing again, but now his pictures showed things before they happened. Small things at first. He drew rain 2 days before an unexpected storm, sketched a bird that would build a nest in their tree the following week. "It's getting stronger," Noah told his mother one evening. "The connection. Not just with the dogs, but with other animals too. Sometimes I can hear what they're feeling." Sarah didn't know whether to be worried or amazed. She'd taken Noah to several doctors, all of whom found nothing unusual except for slightly elevated activity in the parts of his brain associated with empathy and intuition. One psychologist, Dr. Emily Chen, had a theory. Some children are born with heightened sensitivity to nonverbal communication. They pick up on micro-expressions, body language, even pheromones that the rest of us miss. It's not supernatural. It's just a rare ability that we don't fully understand yet. But he knows things he couldn't possibly know, Sarah insisted. Dr. Chen smiled. The human brain processes millions of pieces of information we're not consciously aware of. Noah's brain might just be better at accessing that information. Combined with the trauma of recent events and his bond with the dogs, it's created a unique situation. Whatever the explanation, Noah's gift proved invaluable when, a month after Duke's recovery, he woke up in the middle of the night screaming, "Fire! There's going to be a fire!" David and Sarah rushed to his room, finding him sitting up in bed, sweating and trembling. All 3 dogs were there, alert and agitated. "Where, honey?" Sarah asked, holding him close. "Where's the fire?" "The old building. Where the veterans live. Tomorrow night. Someone's going to start it on purpose." David wanted to dismiss it as a nightmare, but Noah had been right too many times before. The next morning, he called the fire department and reported a potential arson threat at the Veterans Housing Complex on Maple Street. The fire chief was skeptical, but agreed to increase patrols. That night, they caught a man pouring gasoline around the building's back entrance. He was arrested before he could light the match. 23 veterans living in the building were saved from potential disaster. The arsonist turned out to be connected to Harrison's network, trying to destroy evidence hidden in one of the apartments. Noah's warning had saved lives and preserved crucial evidence for the ongoing investigation. News of the prevented tragedy spread quickly. Reporters wanted to interview Noah, to understand his gift, but David and Sarah protected their son from the media attention. They knew that too much scrutiny could be dangerous for a child with such unusual abilities. Thomas, however, had an idea. The boy has a gift. The dogs recognize it. Maybe instead of hiding it, we should help him develop it properly. He reached out to his old military contacts and found Dr. James Whitfield, a researcher who had worked with military service dogs for 30 years. Dr. Whitfield was particularly interested in the bonds between handlers and their dogs, and he'd documented several cases of what he called enhanced communication. "It's not magic, Doctor," Whitfield explained when he visited. "Dogs communicate through body language, scent markers, and energy fields we're only beginning to understand. Some humans are naturally more attuned to these signals. Your son appears to be extraordinarily gifted in this area. He proposed a series of exercises to help Noah understand and control his ability. Simple things at first, predicting which toy a dog would choose, sensing an animal's emotional state from a distance, identifying health issues before symptoms appeared. Noah took to the training eagerly. Within weeks, he could accurately predict Scout's patrol patterns, know when Bella detected illness in visitors, and sense Duke's warnings about approaching strangers. But more importantly, he was learning when to trust these sensations and when to question them. One afternoon, while practicing with Dr. Whitfield, Noah suddenly stopped. His face went pale, and he grabbed the doctor's arm. "Something's wrong with Mr. Thomas, his heart. We need to go now." They found Thomas in his apartment, clutching his chest, unable to call for help. The paramedics said if they had arrived even 5 minutes later, it would have been too late. Noah's warning had saved his life. As Thomas recovered from his mild heart attack, he made a decision. He called David and Sarah to his hospital room for a serious conversation. "I don't have much family left," he said. "No children, no close relatives except for some distant cousins I've never met. I've been thinking about what happens to the dogs when I'm gone." "Don't talk like that," Sarah said. "You're going to be fine." "Maybe, but I'm 73 years old with a bad heart. I need to be realistic." He pulled out a legal document. "I've had a lawyer draw this up. I want Noah to be the dog's legal guardian when I pass. With your permission, of course." David started to protest that it was too much responsibility for a child, but Thomas continued. "These dogs have maybe 2 or 3 years left themselves. They're old warriors like me. But they've chosen Noah. He understands them in a way no one else can. And I think they're teaching him something important." "Teaching him what?" Sarah asked. Thomas smiled. "That connections between souls don't follow the rules we think they do. That loyalty and love transcend species, age, even death itself. These dogs carried the spirits of their handlers for decades. Now, they're passing that legacy to Noah. Over the next few months, life settled into a new rhythm. Thomas grew stronger with regular medical care and proper nutrition. The dogs, despite their age, seemed to have found new energy in their purpose of protecting their extended family. And Noah's abilities continued to develop in surprising ways. He began working with Dr. Martinez at her veterinary clinic on weekends, able to calm frightened animals with just his presence. He helped locate several lost pets by somehow sensing where they'd gone. Once he prevented a serious dog attack by recognizing the animal's fear and pain before it lashed out. But it wasn't all positive. Some people in town began calling Noah the dog boy or the freak kid. Some parents didn't want their children playing with him, afraid of his strange abilities. The Miller family received anonymous letters calling them devil worshippers or suggesting Noah needed psychiatric help. One particularly difficult day, Noah came home from school in tears. Some older kids had surrounded him at recess, barking and howling, calling him a weirdo who talked to animals. Scout, Bella, and Duke immediately surrounded him, offering silent comfort. Thomas came down from his apartment, moving slowly but with purpose. "Noah," he said gently, "let me tell you something about being different. In the war, I had a friend who could sense ambushes before they happened. No one could explain it. Some soldiers called him crazy, others called him cursed. But our unit, we called him our guardian angel. He saved dozens of lives with his gift." "What happened to him?" Noah asked, wiping his tears. "He made it home. Became a teacher. Used his gift to know when students were struggling, even when they couldn't say it. Being different isn't a curse, son. It's a responsibility. You have something special. Don't let anyone make you ashamed of it." That night, Noah had another vivid dream, but this one was different. He saw Thomas as a young man in uniform, standing with other soldiers and their dogs. He saw battles, moments of terror and courage, bonds forged in the worst of circumstances. And he saw something else, a promise made between soldiers and their dogs that their stories wouldn't be forgotten. When he woke, Noah found all 3 dogs sitting by his bed, watching him intently. "You want me to tell their stories," he said softly. "That's why you came to us. Not just to save Mr. Thomas, but to make sure people remember." The dogs' tails wagged in unison, and Noah knew he was right. He started writing that very day. At first, just simple sentences about Scout's bravery, Bella's compassion, Duke's loyalty, but as the weeks passed, the writing became more detailed. Thomas helped, sharing memories of the men who had originally handled these dogs, their missions, their sacrifices. Sarah helped Noah organize his writing into a proper book, The Three Guardians, a true story of war, love, and coming home. It was simple enough for children to understand, but profound enough to move adults to tears. A local publisher, moved by the story and its local connection, agreed to print a small run. The book launch was held at the Veterans Center, with all proceeds going to help homeless veterans and retired military dogs. The night before the book launch, Noah had another powerful dream, but this time it wasn't about the past or future. He saw Danny, Thomas's son, standing with a group of young soldiers. They were smiling, peaceful. "Tell my dad I'm proud of him," Danny said in the dream. "Tell him I've been watching. Tell him he was never alone." When Noah told Thomas about the dream the next morning, the old man broke down crying. "He looked just like that," Thomas whispered, looking at a photograph of Danny. "Exactly like that." The book launch was a bigger success than anyone anticipated. Veterans came from 3 states away. Families who had lost loved ones in various wars found comfort in the story of 3 dogs who never forgot their mission. Animal rescue organizations bought copies to show the value of giving older animals a chance. But the most meaningful moment came when an elderly woman approached Thomas. She was holding the book with trembling hands. "My husband was in your unit," she said. "James Crawford. He was Scout's original handler." Thomas's eyes widened. "Jimmy Crawford. He saved my life twice. Scout was with him when he died," the woman finished. "I know. He wrote me about Scout, about how that dog could sense danger before anyone else. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd make sure Scout was cared for." She looked at Scout, who was sitting beside Noah. "I tried to find him after the war, but he'd disappeared. I thought I'd failed Jimmy's last request." Scout walked over to the woman, sitting at her feet and resting his great head against her knee. She ran her fingers through his fur, tears streaming down her face. "You kept him safe," she whispered to Thomas. "You kept Jimmy's dog safe all these years." That night, the Miller house was quiet. The emotional weight of the day had exhausted everyone. But Noah couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room with the 3 dogs, feeling something shifting in the air. "It's almost time, isn't it?" he said to them. "Your mission is almost complete." Scout looked at him with those wise, ancient eyes. Bella rested her head on his lap. Duke, despite his injury, stood guard as always. Noah understood. The dogs had lived far longer than most of their breed, sustained by purpose and love. They had protected Thomas through his darkest years. They had brought him to a family who could care for him. They had helped expose corruption and bring closure to grieving families. Their stories had been told. But there was one more chapter to write. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. 3 of them, to be exact. A man in his 60s with a military bearing, a woman about the same age with kind eyes, and a younger man in an army uniform. "We're here about the dogs," the older man said. "I'm Colonel Robert Mitchell, retired. This is my wife, Anne, and our son, Captain David Mitchell. We've been following your story." Thomas invited them in, curious but cautious. The 3 dogs immediately perked up, studying the visitors intently. "You see," Colonel Mitchell continued, "we run a program for veterans with PTSD. We use therapy dogs, but we've been struggling to find animals with the right temperament and training. When we heard about Scout, Bella, and Duke, about their continued service even in retirement, we had an idea." "You want our dogs?" Noah asked, a protective edge in his voice. "No," Ann Mitchell said gently. "We want to learn from them. We want them to help train younger dogs, to pass on their knowledge and experience. Not full-time. They're too old for that. But maybe a few hours a week, showing younger dogs how to be guardians." Captain Mitchell knelt down to Noah's level. "We've also heard about your gift. Your ability to understand what animals are thinking and feeling. That's incredibly valuable for training service dogs. We'd like you to help too, if your parents agree." Noah looked at the 3 dogs. Scout's tail was wagging slowly. Bella had her head tilted, interested. Duke stood straighter, as if ready for a new mission. "They want to do it," Noah said. "They want to teach the younger dogs. But He paused, sensing something else. But they need to stay here. This is their home now. Of course, Colonel Mitchell agreed. We'll bring the young dogs here for training sessions. Your backyard would be perfect. And so began a new chapter. Every Wednesday and Saturday, the Mitchells would arrive with 2 or 3 young German shepherds, dogs rescued from shelters who showed potential for service work. Scout, Bella, and Duke, despite their age, would demonstrate behaviors, show the younger dogs how to detect distress, how to provide comfort, how to stay calm in chaos. Noah translated what the older dogs were teaching, helping the trainers understand not just what to do, but why. His unique ability bridged the gap between human training methods and canine understanding. One young dog, a female German shepherd named Hope, bonded particularly strongly with Bella. Hope had been abused, abandoned, too frightened to trust humans. But Bella, with her gentle nature and healing presence, slowly brought Hope out of her shell. Bella's teaching her that not all humans are bad, Noah explained to the trainers. She's showing Hope her memories of good people, kind hands, love that doesn't hurt. Within 2 months, Hope was transformed. She went on to become a therapy dog for children with autism, her gentle nature and intuitive understanding making her perfect for the role. Another young dog, a male named Ranger, learned from Duke about protection without aggression. Duke, even with his limp, showed Ranger how to position himself between a person and danger, how to warn without attacking, how to be brave without being violent. Scout took on the role of elder teacher, showing all the young dogs how to stay focused, how to ignore distractions, how to put their humans' needs above their own desires. His dignity and bearing commanded respect from even the most rambunctious puppies. The program was so successful that it attracted national attention. A documentary crew arrived to film the 3 Guardians training program. They captured remarkable footage of Noah working with the dogs, of the elderly veterans teaching the young, of lives being transformed through these connections. But the cameras also captured something else. The 3 guardian dogs were slowing down. Their age, which they'd defied for so long, was finally catching up with them. Scout's hearing was failing. Bella's arthritis made walking painful on cold days. Duke's old wound caused him constant discomfort, though he never complained. Thomas, too, was declining. His heart condition worsened despite medication. He spent more time in bed, the dogs taking turns lying beside him, keeping watch. One evening, as autumn turned to winter, Noah found Thomas sitting in his apartment with all 3 dogs around him. They were looking through an old photo album, pictures of Thomas's unit in Vietnam, of Danny as a child, of the life he'd had before. Everything changed. Noah, Thomas said softly, I need to tell you something. The dogs. They've been waiting until they knew I'd be okay, until they knew someone would remember our stories. Noah sat beside him, already knowing what was coming. They're tired, aren't they? Thomas nodded, tears in his eyes. They've held on so long, longer than any dog should have to. But I think they know their mission is complete. The bad men are in jail. The truth has been told. The young dogs are learning. And He paused, looking at Noah with profound gratitude. I have a family again. That night, Noah had the most vivid dream yet. He saw a field, endless and green, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Scout, Bella, and Duke were there, but they were young again, strong and vibrant. With them were other dogs, dozens of them, all military dogs who had served and passed on. And there were soldiers too, young men in uniforms from different eras, all smiling, all at peace. They were calling to Scout, Bella, and Duke, welcoming them home. But the 3 dogs looked back at Noah, questioning. Not yet, Noah said in the dream, but soon. And when you go, you won't be forgotten. Ever. The dream faded, but the feeling lingered. Noah knew their time was running short, but he also knew that was okay. The dogs had lived full lives, had completed their purpose, had found peace. What he didn't know was that their greatest challenge was still ahead. 3 days later, the Millers woke to find their front door spray-painted with ugly words. Freak! Devil boy! Get out! Someone had leaked footage from the documentary, edited to make Noah look disturbed, to make his ability seem unnatural and frightening. Social media exploded with conspiracy theories about the possessed child and his demon dogs. Protesters gathered outside their house, holding signs, shouting accusations. Some claimed Noah was a fraud, others that he was dangerous. The school called to say Noah couldn't return until the situation was resolved. Thomas tried to go outside to confront the crowd, but his weak heart couldn't handle the stress. He collapsed on the porch, the dogs immediately surrounding him, keeping the protesters at bay while Sarah called 911. As the ambulance arrived, someone in the crowd threw a rock. It hit Duke in his injured shoulder, causing him to yelp in pain. That sound, that single expression of hurt from a dog who had survived war and bullets, changed something in Noah. He walked out of the house, past his parents' attempts to stop him, and stood on the front lawn. The crowd grew quiet, all eyes on the small boy. "You want to know what I can do?" Noah said, his voice carrying clearly. "Fine, I'll show you." He closed his eyes and opened his mind, not just to the 3 guardian dogs, but to every animal within a mile radius. Every pet dog, every stray cat, every bird and every tree. He felt their consciousness, their simple thoughts and feelings, and he shared with them what was happening. The effect was immediate and eerie. Dogs throughout the neighborhood began howling. Cats appeared on fences and rooftops, all staring at the crowd. Birds filled the trees, hundreds of them, silent and watching. "These animals know something you don't," Noah said, his eyes still closed. "They know that hatred and fear make you weak. They know that Scout, Bella, and Duke have more honor in one paw than any of you have in your whole bodies. They know that, mister. Thomas served his country while you tear it apart with your ignorance." He opened his eyes, looking directly at the crowd. "I can hear what animals think and feel. That's my gift. I use it to help them, to save them, to understand them. If that makes me a freak, then I'm proud to be one. But what does your hatred make you?" An elderly woman in the crowd stepped forward, tears on her face. "My dog has been acting strange all morning. Wouldn't eat, kept pawing at me. Is something wrong with me?" Noah looked at her, then at her small terrier, who had somehow appeared at her feet. "Your dog smells something wrong in your chest, on the left side. You should see a doctor, soon." The woman's face went pale. "My mother died of breast cancer. I've been avoiding my mammogram." The crowd's anger was wavering, uncertainty replacing hostility. Then a man pushed to the front, his face red with rage. Noah recognized him, Carl Patterson, whose son had been one of the bullies at school. "This is all tricks," Carl shouted. "Trained animals and lucky guesses. You're all being fooled." Duke, despite his injury, stood up and walked toward the man. Not aggressively, but with purpose. He sat directly in front of Carl and looked up at him with those knowing eyes. "Your son is in pain," Noah said quietly. "Not physical pain. Emotional. His anger at me comes from something else. Something at home." Carl's face went from red to white. "You don't know anything about my family." "Duke can smell the alcohol on you," Noah continued. "Every morning. Your son told kids at school his dad doesn't hurt him, but Duke knows differently. Dogs always know." The crowd was dead silent now. Carl's hands were shaking. That's private." "So is my gift," Noah replied. "But you made it public. You brought hatred to my home. You hurt the beings I love. So now everyone knows your truth too." Carl turned and pushed through the crowd, leaving. Several others followed, shame replacing anger. But many stayed, now looking at Noah with different eyes. "These dogs," Noah said, gesturing to Scout, Bella, and Duke, "saved Mr. Thomas's life. They protected military secrets. They helped expose criminals. They're training the next generation of service dogs. They've done more good in their lives than most humans ever will. And they're dying." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "They're old. They're tired. They've held on longer than any dog should because they had a mission. That mission is almost complete. When they go, they'll leave behind a legacy of service, loyalty, and love. What legacy will you leave?" The crowd began to disperse, many looking ashamed. Some approached to apologize. The woman with the terrier hugged Noah, promising to get her mammogram immediately. As the last protesters left, Noah collapsed. The effort of connecting with so many animals at once had drained him. David carried him inside, while Sarah helped Thomas, who had refused to go to the hospital, insisting on seeing the confrontation through. "You did good, son," Thomas whispered to Noah. "You stood up to them. That took real courage. Noah looked at the 3 dogs who had arranged themselves around his bed. They gave me the strength. All of them did. That night, something shifted. The harassment stopped. The social media attacks turned to support as the truth about Carl Patterson came out. He was arrested 2 days later for domestic violence. The woman Noah had warned was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer, caught just in time. The documentary crew returned, this time to film the real story, not sensationalized, but honest. They interviewed veterans whose lives had been saved by dogs like Scout, Bella, and Duke. They showed the young service dogs being trained, the hope in the eyes of their future handlers. But, most importantly, they captured the love between an old man, 3 aging dogs, and a remarkable boy who could hear what others couldn't. Winter deepened, and with it came a sense of ending. Scout's breathing became labored. Bella stopped eating. Duke could barely walk. Thomas spent most of his time sleeping, the dogs never leaving his side. On a cold December morning, Noah woke knowing something had changed. He found Thomas in his apartment, awake but weak, all 3 dogs on his bed. "It's time, isn't it?" Noah asked. Thomas nodded, unable to speak through his tears. Dr. Martinez came to the house. She examined each dog gently, her own eyes wet. "They're not in pain," she said, "but their bodies are shutting down. They're ready." "Together," Thomas said hoarsely. "They need to go together." They've never been apart. Dr. Martinez understood. As the Miller family gathered in Thomas's apartment, she prepared 3 injections. The dogs seemed to understand too. They arranged themselves around Thomas, Scout on his right, Bella on his left, Duke at his feet. Noah sat with them, his hands touching all 3 dogs. "I'll remember," he promised them. "I'll tell everyone about you. About your service, your loyalty, your love. You'll never be forgotten." Scout's tail wagged once. Bella licked Noah's hand. Duke looked at Thomas with those wise, protective eyes, one last time. "Thank you," Thomas whispered to them. "Thank you for saving me, for giving me purpose, for bringing me home." Dr. Martinez administered the injections gently, peacefully. One by one, the 3 guardians closed their eyes, their breathing slowing, then stopping. They went as they had lived, together, with dignity, surrounded by love. The silence that followed was profound. Thomas wept openly, his frail hands stroking their still warm fur. Noah cried too, but through his tears, he smiled. "They're running," he said softly. "In that field I dreamed about. They're young again, and strong and free. And they're not alone. All the soldiers they loved are there, waiting for them." Thomas looked at Noah with wonder. "You can see them?" "Not see," Noah said. "Feel. They want you to know they'll wait for you. But not yet. You still have things to do here." The community responded to the loss with an outpouring of support. The Veterans Organization held a memorial service with full military honors. 3 flags were folded and presented to Thomas, who gave one to Noah. "You were their last handler," he said. "They chose you to carry on their mission." The young dogs in the training program seemed to sense the loss. Hope, the dog Bella had mentored, howled for 3 days. Ranger, who had learned from Duke, stood guard at the Miller house every night for a week. But life continued, as it always does. The training program expanded, renamed the 3 Guardian Service Dog Initiative. Noah's book was picked up by a major publisher, with proceeds going to veteran and animal welfare organizations. Thomas, against all medical expectations, began to improve. His heart, which had been failing, stabilized. His doctors couldn't explain it, but Noah could. He was ready to go with them, Noah explained to his parents, but they told him to stay. He still has work to do. That work became clear when Thomas was contacted by the Pentagon. The information he'd protected had led to the recovery of remains of 7 missing in action soldiers. Their families finally had closure. Thomas was invited to Washington to receive a long overdue commendation for his service. He insisted Noah come with him. Standing in the Pentagon, surrounded by generals and officials, Thomas told the story of 3 dogs who had saved his life in more ways than one. He told them about a boy who could hear what animals were thinking. He proposed a new program using gifted individuals like Noah to better understand and train military and service animals. To everyone's surprise, they listened. Within 6 months, the Canine Communication Project was established, with Noah as its youngest consultant. He worked with military handlers, teaching them to better understand their dogs' signals. His methods, though unconventional, produced remarkable results. One day, while working with a particularly troubled dog, a German shepherd who'd lost his handler in Afghanistan, Noah felt a familiar presence. Not Scout, Bella, or Duke exactly, but something of them. Their knowledge, their experience, their love, flowing through him into this damaged dog. "They're still here," he told Thomas that evening. "Not physically, but their spirit, their purpose. It lives on in every dog they trained, every life they touched." Thomas smiled, looking at the 3 photographs on his wall, Scout, Bella, and Duke in their prime, young and strong in military gear. "I know," he said. "I feel them too, especially at night when I'm alone. They're still standing guard, a year past." The Miller house, once filled with the presence of 3 guardian dogs, now regularly hosted young service dogs in training. Noah's abilities had grown stronger, but more controlled. He could now teach others to recognize the subtle signals animals gave, though no one could match his natural gift. Thomas had become a grandfather figure to dozens of young veterans who came to learn about the training program. His apartment was filled with letters from families whose loved ones had been helped by dogs trained using the 3 guardians method. On the anniversary of the dog's passing, something unexpected happened. A woman appeared at their door with a small German shepherd puppy. She was one of the veterans who'd been saved by the warning about the arson attempt. "This is Scout's great-grandpup," she said, offering the squirming bundle to Noah. "His line has been preserved by the military. They thought you should have him." Noah took the puppy, feeling an immediate connection. The little dog looked up at him with eyes that seemed impossibly familiar. "Hello, Legacy," Noah said, the name coming to him instantly. Legacy grew quickly, showing the same intelligence and intuition as his ancestor. But more than that, he seemed to carry memories that weren't his own. He knew things he couldn't have known, where Scout used to hide toys, which chair Thomas preferred, the exact spot where Duke used to stand guard. "It's not possible," Sarah said, watching Legacy perform a complex protective maneuver no one had taught him. "Mom," Noah said patiently, "after everything we've seen, do you really want to talk about what's possible?" Thomas, now 75, but somehow stronger than he'd been in years, watched Legacy with wonder. "They sent him," he said simply. "Scout, Bella, and Duke. They sent him to make sure we keep going." The work continued. More dogs were trained. More veterans were helped. More connections were made between humans and animals that defied conventional understanding. Noah grew from a gifted child into a remarkable young man. His ability to bridge the gap between species revolutionizing how we understand animal consciousness. But he never forgot the 3 dogs who started it all. In his office at the Canine Communication Project hung 3 portraits, Scout, Bella, and Duke. Beneath them, a simple plaque. They served in war. They served in peace. They served until their last breath. Guardian angels come in many forms. Every morning, Legacy would sit beneath those portraits for exactly 3 minutes, as if paying respect to his ancestors. And sometimes, just sometimes, Noah could swear he saw 3 shadows standing beside the young dog, still, watching, still protecting, still serving. The story of the 3 German shepherds who cried in a tunnel had become legend. But for Noah, for Thomas, for everyone whose lives they had touched, it was more than legend. It was proof that love transcends death, that loyalty knows no bounds, and that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world. The spring following Legacy's arrival brought changes no one could have predicted. Noah, now 11 years old, had grown into his gift with a maturity that surprised everyone who met him. Legacy had become his constant companion, displaying abilities that even Noah found remarkable. It was a Tuesday morning when everything shifted again. Noah woke with a start, Legacy already alert beside his bed, both of them sensing something approaching. Not danger this time, but something equally significant. "Mom," Noah said, coming down to breakfast with an urgency in his voice. "We need to go to the old tunnel today." Sarah paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. They hadn't been back to the drainage tunnel since that fateful day 6 years ago when they'd found Thomas. "Why, honey?" "Someone needs us there," Someone like Mr. Thomas, but different. Legacy knows the way. David lowered his newspaper. Noah, we can't just go exploring drainage tunnels because, please, Dad, remember what happened last time you didn't believe me right away? That stopped both parents. Every time they'd doubted Noah's instincts, they'd later regretted it. His gift had only grown stronger with time, especially with Legacy amplifying his abilities. Thomas came down from his apartment, moving slowly but steadily with his cane. What's the boy sensing now? Someone at the tunnel needs help, Noah explained. But it's not just one person. There's more. Legacy can feel them too. The young German shepherd barked once, as if confirming Noah's words. Thomas studied both boy and dog, recognizing the certainty in their posture. Then we go, Thomas said simply. I learned long ago to trust the instincts of those who see what others can't. An hour later, they stood at the entrance to the same drainage tunnel. It looked different in daylight without a storm, less ominous, but somehow sadder. Graffiti covered the entrance, and trash littered the area. Legacy pulled forward on his leash, nose to the ground, following a scent trail only he could detect. Noah let him lead, feeling the familiar tingle in his mind that meant he was connecting with the dog's enhanced senses. There, Noah pointed to a section of the tunnel that branched off from the main passage. Someone's been living back there. As they approached, they heard it. Soft whimpering, not unlike the sound Scout Bella and Duke had made years ago. But this wasn't dogs crying. This was human. David turned on his flashlight, illuminating the branch tunnel. There, huddled in the darkness, was a young woman, maybe 25 years old, in worn military fatigues. But she wasn't alone. Pressed against her were 3 puppies, German Shepherd mixes by the look of them, none more than 8 weeks old. The woman looked up with hollow eyes, fear and desperation written across her dirt-smudged face. Please, she whispered, please don't call the police. They'll take them away. Noah stepped forward before his parents could stop him, Legacy matching his pace. We're not here to take anyone away, he said gently. We're here to help. My name is Noah. This is Legacy. What's yours? The woman stared at Noah, then at Legacy, and something in her expression shifted. You're him. The boy from the news, the one who can talk to dogs. I don't talk to them exactly, Noah explained, sitting down a safe distance away. I just understand them better than most. Like, I understand that these puppies are special to you. They're not just strays you found. The woman's eyes filled with tears. They're all I have left of her. Of Sasha. Sasha was your military dog, Noah said, not asking but knowing. Legacy had moved closer to the puppies, who were now curiously sniffing at him. The woman nodded. Sergeant Lisa Morgan, Army K-9 unit. Sasha was my partner in Afghanistan. She saved my life, detected an IED before I walked into it. But Lisa's voice broke. She didn't make it. The explosion? I tried to save her, but Thomas moved forward, his own eyes wet with understanding. You brought her home. Lisa looked up at him, recognizing something in his bearing. You served? Vietnam? Different war? Same losses? Thomas sat down carefully on a piece of cardboard. Sasha had puppies before she deployed? After, when we got back. She was injured but stable. The Army was going to retire her anyway. I was getting discharged for medical reasons. PTSD, they said. Like, it's that simple. Lisa's bitter laugh echoed in the tunnel. Sasha had one last litter. The father was another military dog ranger. Good bloodlines, they said. But then, the seizures started, Noah said quietly, getting a flash of memory from the puppies. Sasha had seizures from her head injury. Lisa stared at him in amazement. How could you know that? The puppies remember. They were only 2 weeks old, but they remember their mother's distress. They remember you holding her as she died. 3 weeks ago, Lisa whispered. She lasted 3 weeks after giving birth. Long enough to nurse them, to give them a start. Then one morning, she just didn't wake up. Sarah knelt beside the young woman. Lisa, why are you living in this tunnel? Lost my apartment when I couldn't work. PTSD makes it hard to hold a job. The VA hospital waiting list is months long. Shelters won't take the puppies, and I won't abandon them. They're all I have left of Sasha, of my life before everything fell apart. David was already pulling out his phone. We're getting you out of here, all of you. No, Lisa pulled the puppies closer. You don't understand. There are people looking for these puppies. The military wants them for their breeding program. Some private contractor has been harassing me, saying Sasha's puppies are government property. If they find us... Harrison, Thomas said grimly, has to be one of Harrison's associates. Even in prison, he has connections. Noah closed his eyes, extending his senses through Legacy to the puppies. What he felt made him gasp. They're like Scout, Bella, and Duke. They have the gift. All three of them. Legacy barked in agreement, his tail wagging as he gently nuzzled one of the puppies. The gift? Lisa asked. Enhanced perception, Noah explained. The ability to sense things beyond normal canine capabilities. Illness, danger, emotional distress. It's rare. Maybe 1 in 1,000 military dogs have it. These three... He paused, studying the puppies more closely. They're even stronger than their mother was. Thomas stood with determination. Then we protect them. Just like we protected Scout, Bella, and Duke. Lisa, you're coming with us. You and the puppies. I can't impose... You're not imposing, Sarah said firmly. You're a veteran in need, with 3 puppies who deserve better than a drainage tunnel. We have space, and more importantly, we have experience with special dogs. It took some convincing, but eventually, Lisa agreed to come with them. As they prepared to leave the tunnel, Noah noticed something that made him stop. Scratched into the concrete wall were hundreds of tally marks, and beside them, names. Dog names. Other military dogs, Lisa explained, seeing where he was looking. This tunnel has been a refuge for handlers who lost everything. We marked the names of our partners so they're not forgotten. Noah ran his fingers over the names. Rex, Thunder, Apollo, Mercy. So many partners, so many bonds broken by war and circumstance. At the bottom, freshly scratched, was Sasha. We need to do more, Noah said to his parents. It's not just Lisa. There are others out there, veterans with their dogs or mourning them, living in places like this. As they walked back to the cars, Lisa carrying one puppy while Noah and Sarah carried the others, Legacy suddenly stopped. His ears perked up, and he gave a low warning growl. A black SUV was parked near their cars. A man in an expensive suit stood beside it, his smile not reaching his cold eyes. Miss Morgan, he said smoothly, I've been looking for you. My name is Richard Stone. I represent certain interests regarding military asset recovery. The puppies aren't military assets, Lisa said, holding her puppy tighter. Actually, they are. Their mother was government property, making her offspring subject to recovery. I have the paperwork right here. He pulled out official-looking documents, but Thomas stepped forward. Let me see those. Stone hesitated, then handed them over. Thomas read quickly, his face growing darker with each line. These are forgeries. Good ones, but forgeries. The seal is wrong, and this supposed commanding officer retired 5 years ago. You're mistaken, old man. No, Thomas said firmly. I'm not. And you're going to leave now, or we're calling the real military police. Stone's facade cracked slightly. Those puppies are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to the right buyers. Military-grade detection dogs with proven bloodlines. You're interfering with legitimate business. Legitimate? Noah stepped forward, Legacy beside him. You're trying to steal puppies from a veteran who lost everything serving our country. There's nothing legitimate about that. Stone looked at Noah with interest. You're the boy from the news. The one who supposedly talks to animals. My employers would be very interested in meeting you. Your employers can... David started, but Noah held up his hand. Mr. Stone, Legacy here comes from Scout's bloodline. You know who Scout was? Stone's eyes flicked to the young German shepherd, the dog from the Walker case. That's right. And Scout had a very special talent. He could identify threats, bad people, people who meant harm. Noah paused, letting Legacy step forward. Legacy inherited that talent, and right now, he's telling me something very interesting about you. Legacy was indeed focused intently on Stone, his body rigid, a low growl building in his throat. He smells fear on you, Noah continued, but not fear of us, fear of failure, fear of your employers. You're desperate, aren't you? This isn't your first failed recovery. They're running out of patience with you. Stone's face had gone pale. You don't know anything. I know you have a gun in an ankle holster, Noah said, getting the information from Legacy's enhanced senses. I know you haven't slept in 3 days. I know you're considering doing something stupid because you're more afraid of your bosses than you are of the law. Noah, get back, David said, moving protectively toward his son. But Noah stood his ground. Mister Stone, you have a choice. Leave now and tell your employers the puppies died. Or stay and face what's coming. What's coming? Stone asked, but his bravado was fading. The sound of sirens answered his question. Multiple vehicles, police, but also military police that Thomas had quietly called while Stone was distracted. Stone ran for his SUV, but Legacy was faster. The young dog didn't attack, but simply positioned himself in front of the vehicle, barking loudly. Other dogs in the neighborhood joined in, creating a cacophony that drew everyone's attention. Within minutes, Stone was in custody. The fake documents led to a larger investigation that uncovered a trafficking ring dealing in military and police dogs. 17 dogs were recovered and returned to their rightful handlers or families. Lisa and the puppies were settled into the Miller home temporarily. The garage apartment had been expanded over the years, and there was room for her next to Thomas. The two veterans bonded immediately over shared experiences and losses. The puppies, whom Lisa had named Honor, Valor, and Grace, showed remarkable development. By 10 weeks old, they were displaying abilities that adult dogs rarely achieved. Honor could detect changes in blood sugar levels. Valor showed an uncanny ability to sense impending seizures. Grace seemed to know when someone was about to have a panic attack. They need proper training, Noah said one evening, watching the puppies play with Legacy. But more than that, they need the right handlers. People who understand their gift. This gave Thomas an idea. What if we expanded the program? Not just training dogs, but matching them with veterans who need them. Lisa could help run it. She understands both sides. Lisa looked up from where she was bottle-feeding Grace, the smallest of the three. I don't know anything about running a program. You know about being a handler who lost everything, Thomas said gently. You know about the bond between soldier and dog. That's more valuable than any administrative experience. Over the next few weeks, they developed the proposal. The Three Guardians Veterans Initiative would not only train service dogs, but specifically match them with homeless or struggling veterans. Lisa would be the liaison, using her experience to identify veterans in need. The first veteran they helped was James, a Marine who'd been living under a bridge with his aging Labrador, Gunner. Gunner wasn't a military dog, just a pet, but he was all James had left. When local authorities threatened to take Gunner because James couldn't afford veterinary care, Noah and Lisa intervened. Gunner's sick, Noah said, after spending time with the dog. Diabetes, but manageable with proper treatment. They brought both James and Gunner into the program. James got housing assistance and job training, while Gunner received medical care. In return, James helped train the younger dogs, his Marine discipline perfect for the work. Word spread through the veteran community. Soon, they were getting calls from across the state, veterans with dogs who needed help, veterans who'd lost dogs and were spiraling into depression, veterans who'd never had a dog but desperately needed the companionship and support. One case particularly touched Noah's heart. Maria, an Air Force veteran, had lost her service dog, Apollo, to cancer. She'd kept Apollo's collar and tags, carrying them everywhere, unable to let go. She'd attempted suicide twice since his death. When Noah met Maria, he immediately sensed something. Apollo's still with you? He said gently. Not physically, but his presence. He's waiting. Waiting for what? Maria asked through tears. For you to be ready to love again. Not to replace him, but to honor him by saving another dog who needs you. They introduced Maria to Hope, the dog Bella had trained before her passing. Hope had been returned to the program after her handler moved overseas. The connection was immediate and powerful. Maria later said that holding Hope felt like Apollo had sent her a gift. As summer turned to fall, the program had helped 50 veterans and 30 dogs, but success brought new challenges. They needed more space, more funding, more trainers. It was Noah who suggested the solution. The old Walker property, Henry Walker's house. It's been sitting empty since the investigation ended. The house where Scout, Bella, and Duke had protected Thomas's secrets had been tied up in legal proceedings. But with the case closed and no heirs claiming it, the property was available. "It's perfect," Thomas said when they visited. 5 acres, multiple buildings. Henry would have wanted it used for something like this. The legal process took months, but eventually, the Three Guardians Veterans Initiative acquired the property. The community rallied to help renovate it. Construction companies donated materials. Veterans volunteered labor. Local businesses provided furniture and supplies. Noah, now 12, spent every afternoon at the property with Legacy and the growing pack of dogs in training. His abilities had evolved to the point where he could sense not just what animals were feeling, but what they needed to reach their full potential. One day, while working with a particularly traumatized German Shepherd named Storm, Noah felt something shift. Storm had been rescued from a fighting ring, too aggressive for normal adoption, but showing signs of the gift. As Noah sat quietly with Storm, Legacy beside him, he felt memories that weren't Storm's. They were older, deeper. Images of Scout, Bella, and Duke flashed through his mind. But more than images, knowledge, training techniques, calming methods, ways to reach damaged dogs that went beyond normal understanding. "They're teaching me," Noah whispered to Legacy. "Even gone, they're still teaching." Storm, who hadn't let anyone touch him in 6 months, slowly walked over and rested his head on Noah's knee. Within 3 weeks, Storm was paired with a veteran named Marcus, who'd lost his leg in Iraq. Marcus's own anger and Storm's trauma somehow balanced each other, both healing through their bond. The program's success attracted national attention. News crews arrived to document the miracle of Riverside Township. But with attention came scrutiny. Some questioned whether Noah's abilities were real or just clever observation. Others worried about a child having so much influence over veteran care. The challenge came from an unexpected source. Dr. Patricia Hawkins, a renowned animal behaviorist, arrived with a film crew to expose what she called the exploitation of vulnerable veterans through pseudoscience. "I'd like to test your supposed abilities," she told Noah, cameras rolling, "under controlled conditions." Noah agreed, but on one condition. "The dogs choose the test, not you." Dr. Hawkins brought 3 dogs Noah had never met. One was her own pet. One was borrowed from a local shelter. And one was a trained service dog. She mixed them up and asked Noah to identify which was which without any prior information. Noah didn't even need to close his eyes. Legacy walked up to each dog and Noah simply knew. "This one," he said, pointing to a border collie, "is yours. She has arthritis in her left hip that you haven't noticed yet. She's been hiding it because she doesn't want to worry you." Dr. Hawkins' skepticism wavered. Her dog had been moving stiffly lately, but she'd attributed it to age. "This one," Noah continued, indicating a mixed breed, "is from the shelter. He was abandoned 3 weeks ago by an elderly woman who went into hospice. He's grieving and confused. He doesn't understand why she left." The shelter confirmed this information, which hadn't been shared with anyone outside their staff. "And this," Noah said, approaching the German Shepherd, "is the service dog. But he's more than that. He's retired military, aren't you, boy? Served 2 tours, saved 3 lives. His handler died by suicide 14 months ago, and he's been searching for purpose ever since." The German Shepherd, who'd been aloof until that moment, walked over to Noah and sat, leaning against his leg. Dr. Hawkins was speechless. Her cameraman had tears in his eyes. "How?" she finally asked. "I don't know how," Noah said honestly. "I just know that when we really listen, really pay attention, animals tell us everything. Not in words, but in a language older than speech. The footage never aired as an exposé. Instead, Dr. Hawkins became one of the program's strongest supporters, bringing scientific credibility to what Noah did intuitively. Winter arrived with unexpected news. The Department of Defense wanted to formally recognize the Three Guardians Veterans Initiative as an official partner program. This meant funding, resources, and most importantly, access to veterans who might otherwise never seek help. The ceremony was held at the renovated Walker property. Military officials, local dignitaries, and dozens of veterans with their dogs attended. Noah was asked to speak. Standing at the podium with Legacy beside him, Noah looked out at the crowd. He saw Lisa with honor, valor, and grace, now magnificent young dogs beginning their training. He saw Thomas, frailer but still strong, pride shining in his eyes. He saw his parents who'd supported this journey from the beginning, and for just a moment, he saw something else. 3 shadows at the edge of the property, watching: Scout, Bella, and Duke, still standing guard. 6 years ago, Noah began, 3 German shepherds cried from a dark tunnel. They were calling for help, not for themselves, but for the man they loved. Those dogs, Scout, Bella, and Duke, taught me that loyalty doesn't end with death, that service doesn't stop when the uniform comes off, that love between human and animal can transcend everything we think we know about the world. He paused, feeling legacy press closer to his side. Every dog here carries their spirit. Every veteran here deserves what they offered: unconditional love, unwavering loyalty, and the knowledge that they're never alone. The crowd erupted in applause, but Noah wasn't finished. There's something else I need to say. Something Scout, Bella, and Duke wanted me to understand. They weren't special because they were military dogs. They were special because they chose to love. Even after seeing the worst of humanity, they chose to protect, even when they were hurt. They chose to stay, even when leaving would have been easier. He looked directly at the veterans in the audience. You've all made those same choices. You've seen darkness but chosen light. You've been wounded but chosen to heal. You've lost everything but chosen to keep going. The dogs don't complete you. They recognize what's already there: your strength, your courage, your capacity for love, despite everything. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Even the military officials, trained to maintain composure, were visibly moved. After the ceremony, as people mingled and shared stories, an elderly man approached Noah. He was bent with age, walking with a cane, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "You don't know me," he said, "but I knew Henry Walker, served with him in Vietnam. I was there when he got Scout's predecessor, the first dog. Henry always said dogs could see into souls, said they knew things humans were too complicated to understand." He pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a young Henry Walker with a German shepherd, surrounded by other soldiers and their dogs. This was taken 2 weeks before the mission that changed everything. Half these men didn't come home, but their dogs remembered them, honored them, just like Scout, Bella, and Duke honored those who came before. Noah studied the photo, feeling the weight of history in it. What happened to the other dogs? Some made it home, some didn't. But Henry tracked down everyone he could find, made sure they were cared for. It's why Scout, Bella, and Duke came to him. He was already known in the community of military dogs as someone who understood. The old man handed Noah the photograph. "Henry would want you to have this. You're carrying on his work, even if you never met him." As the sun set over the property, casting long shadows across the grounds, Noah stood with legacy, watching the veterans and their dogs. Some were playing, some were training, some were simply sitting together in comfortable silence. Lisa approached with the 3 puppies, now 6 months old and showing extraordinary promise. Honor detected a tumor in one of the volunteers today. Benign, but it needs treatment. The doctor confirmed it. "They're going to be extraordinary," Noah said, watching the puppies play. "They already are," Lisa replied, "just like their predecessors." That night, Noah had a vivid dream. He was in the green field again, the one where Scout, Bella, and Duke had gone. But this time, it was full of dogs, hundreds of them, military dogs from every era, all young and healthy again. Scout approached him in the dream, somehow able to speak in a way Noah could understand. "The work continues," Scout seemed to say. "Each dog carries forward the love of those before. Each handler heals not just themselves, but honors those who couldn't be saved. This is the legacy." Noah woke to find legacy staring at him, tail wagging as if he'd shared the dream. Outside, the first snow of winter was beginning to fall, covering the world in a blanket of white. The program grew exponentially over the next year. They opened satellite locations in 3 other states. They developed a curriculum that combined Noah's intuitive methods with Dr. Hawkins' scientific approach. They created a network of veterans helping veterans, dogs training dogs, healing spreading in ripples from that first moment in the tunnel. Noah, now 13, had grown tall and confident. His gift had evolved to the point where he could teach others to develop their own sensitivity to animal communication. Not everyone could do what he did, but everyone could learn to better understand the animals in their care. One of his students was a young girl named Emma, whose father had died in Afghanistan. She'd been mute since receiving the news, refusing or unable to speak. Her mother brought her to the program, hoping that working with dogs might help. Noah paired Emma with Grace, the smallest of Lisa's puppies, now a fully trained therapy dog. The connection was immediate. Within a week, Emma was whispering to Grace. Within a month, she was talking to everyone, her voice freed by the unconditional acceptance of a dog who understood grief. "How did you know?" Emma's mother asked Noah, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter laugh for the first time in 2 years. "I didn't," Noah admitted. Grace knew. She lost her mother young too. Sometimes healing comes from shared pain, transformed into shared strength. The program faced challenges too. Funding was always tight. Some veterans were too damaged, too lost to help immediately. Some dogs couldn't overcome their trauma, despite everyone's best efforts. The hardest loss came when Thomas had another heart attack. This time, he didn't fully recover. He was confined to a wheelchair, his speech slurred, his memories sometimes confused. But his spirit remained strong, especially when the dogs were near. "I'm not afraid," he told Noah one evening, Legacy lying beside his wheelchair. Scout, Bella, and Duke showed me that endings aren't really endings, just transitions. Noah held the old man's hand, feeling the paper-thin skin, the weak pulse. "You've done so much good, Mr. Thomas. Saved so many." "No," Thomas corrected gently. "We did. All of us together. The dogs, you, your family, this community. That's how healing works, in circles, spreading outward." Thomas passed peacefully 2 weeks later, surrounded by dogs and the people who'd become his family. His funeral was attended by hundreds, veterans he'd helped, families whose lives he'd touched, officials whose respect he'd earned. But the most moving tribute came from the dogs. As the funeral procession moved through town, dogs appeared at every corner. Not just program dogs, but pets, strays, working dogs. They stood silently, watching, as if paying respects to a man who had understood their worth. At the graveside, Legacy did something unexpected. He walked to Thomas's casket, placed a paw on it, and howled, a long, mournful sound that was immediately taken up by every dog within hearing. The sound rose and fell like a song, a farewell that transcended species. Later, Noah found a letter Thomas had left for him. "Noah, if you're reading this, then I've gone to join Scout, Bella, and Duke. Don't mourn for me. Celebrate what we built together. You have a gift that goes beyond talking to animals. You see the connections that bind all living things. You understand that love doesn't recognize the boundaries we create. The program is yours now. Not to run, you're still too young for that, but to guide, to ensure it never loses sight of its purpose. Healing through connection, service through love. Remember what the dogs taught us. Loyalty means staying even when it's hard. Service means giving even when you have little. Love means seeing the best in others even when they can't see it themselves. Take care of Legacy. He carries more than Scout's bloodline. He carries the spirit of every dog who ever served, ever loved, ever chose a human to protect. And take care of yourself. Your gift is powerful, but demanding. Don't let it consume you. Remember to live, to laugh, to be a child while you still can. Thank you for saving me that day in the tunnel. But more than that, thank you for showing me that I was worth saving. With all my love and respect, Thomas." Noah cried reading the letter. Legacy pressed against him, offering silent comfort. But through his tears, he felt something else. Determination. The work would continue. It had to. 5 years passed. Noah, now 18, had become nationally recognized as an expert in animal-assisted therapy for veterans. He'd written books, given lectures, trained hundreds of handlers, but he still spent most of his time at the original facility, working directly with dogs and veterans. Legacy, now 7, had sired several litters, his puppies carrying on the tradition of exceptional service. One of them, a female named Hope, after the original Hope who'd passed peacefully at 14, worked with Emma, who'd grown into a talented young trainer herself. The program had helped over 3,000 veterans and 1,500 dogs. It had inspired similar programs worldwide. But for Noah, the numbers were less important than the individual connections, the moments of breakthrough, the small miracles that happened every day. One autumn afternoon, a woman arrived at the facility with a cardboard box. Inside were 3 German Shepherd puppies, barely a week old, abandoned by the roadside. "I heard you take special dogs," she said. "These ones, I don't know, they just seem different. The way they look at you." Noah knelt beside the box, extending his senses. What he felt made him smile. "Oh, you're special all right," he told the puppies. "You're carrying something forward, aren't you?" He looked up at the woman. "Thank you for bringing them. They're exactly where they need to be." As the woman left, Noah carried the box to the puppy nursery, Legacy walking beside him. The older dog sniffed the puppies carefully, then looked at Noah with what could only be described as approval. "I know, boy," Noah said. "The cycle continues." That night, Noah stood on the hill overlooking the property. Lights glowed in various buildings where veterans and dogs were living, training, healing. He could hear laughter from the common room, barking from the training yard, the quiet murmur of someone reading to their dog. Legacy sat beside him, alert and watchful as always. In the distance, Noah could swear he saw 3 shadows, Scout, Bella, and Duke, still standing guard, still watching over what they had helped create. His phone buzzed with a message from Lisa, now the program director. "New veteran arriving tomorrow. Lost his dog in a house fire saving a child. Hasn't spoken since. Think you can help?" Noah typed back. "We'll try. Bring him to the Memorial Garden first." The Memorial Garden was Thomas's final gift, a space he'd designed before his death, where photos and collars of past service dogs were displayed. At its center stood 3 statues, Scout, Bella, and Duke, forever young, forever vigilant. The next morning, Noah met the new veteran, Marcus, at the garden. The man was young, maybe 25, with burn scars on his hands and the hollow look of someone who'd lost everything. "This was Duke," Noah said, placing his hand on one statue. "He took a bullet for his human." "This was Bella. She detected cancer in dozens of veterans, saved more lives than we can count." "This was Scout. He protected military secrets for decades, even after his handler died." Marcus remained silent, but Noah saw tears gathering in his eyes. "Your dog, Ranger, wasn't it? He's here too," Noah continued, leading Marcus to a newer section where a photo had already been placed. A hero who chose a child's life over his own. "That kind of love doesn't die, Marcus. It transforms." Marcus's lips moved, no sound coming out at first. Then, barely a whisper, "He was all I had." "No," Noah said gently. "He was all you needed then. But now you're here, and there are dogs who need what only you can give, understanding of loss transformed into purpose." As if on cue, one of the new puppies from the abandoned box totaled over, having escaped from the nursery. The tiny thing sat at Marcus's feet, looking up with eyes too wise for such a young face. Marcus knelt slowly, his scarred hands trembling as he reached for the puppy. The moment they touched, something shifted. The puppy licked Marcus's scarred fingers, and the man broke down completely, sobbing while holding the tiny life. "Ranger sent him," Marcus whispered through his tears. "I can feel it. He sent him." Noah smiled, remembering another time, another tunnel, another moment when connection transcended explanation. They always do. The ones we lose send us the ones who need us. It's how love works. It never really leaves, just changes form. Over the following months, Marcus and the puppy, whom he named Phoenix, became inseparable. Marcus found his voice again, first talking to Phoenix, then to other veterans, eventually becoming a counselor in the program. Phoenix grew into a remarkable dog, able to detect PTSD episodes before they happened, giving Marcus and others time to use coping strategies. The cycle continued. Dogs and humans finding each other, healing together, creating bonds that defied logic but made perfect sense to the heart. Each story unique, yet all connected by the thread that started with 3 German shepherds crying in a tunnel. Noah often thought about that day, how his 5-year-old self had insisted on helping despite the danger. He couldn't have known then where it would lead, the lives saved, the connections made, the purpose found in what seemed like tragedy. Now, standing in the same spot where Scout, Bella, and Duke had been buried, watching Legacy train a new generation of service dogs, Noah understood the full magnitude of their gift. They hadn't just saved Thomas. They'd created a legacy of healing that would outlast them all. "Thank you," he whispered to the wind, to the memory, to the spirit of 3 dogs who'd changed everything. Legacy barked once, as if conveying a response from beyond. The work continues. The love endures. The guardians never truly leave. As the sun set over the 3 guardians' veterans initiative, casting golden light over the buildings and the people and dogs within them, Noah felt the presence of all who'd come before: Scout, Bella, Duke, Thomas, and so many others. They were all still here in some way, their love and service woven into the fabric of this place. A new veteran was arriving tomorrow. Another dog needed placement, more connections to be made, more healing to facilitate, more love to unleash into a world that desperately needed it. The work continued. It always would, because once a guardian, always a guardian, and guardians never abandon their post. That night, Noah dreamed one last dream. He was in the green field again, but this time it stretched infinitely in all directions. Dogs and humans walked together. Some he recognized, many he didn't. All were young, healthy, free from pain. Scout approached him one final time in the dream. The magnificent German Shepherd looked into Noah's eyes and without words communicated everything. Every connection matters. Every act of love ripples outward. Every life saved saves others in turn. The boy who heard dogs crying in a tunnel had become a man who helped thousands hear the same call, the call to serve, to love, to heal. This was their true legacy. Not just the program, not just the buildings or the training methods or the recognition. It was the proof that love transcends species, that loyalty survives death, that service never truly ends. It was the knowledge that somewhere, always, a guardian watches. Whether on 4 legs or 2, in this life or beyond, the guardians stand ready. They wait for those who need them. They answer when called. They never, ever give up. Noah woke with tears on his face and Legacy's head on his chest, the dog's eyes reflecting ancient wisdom and eternal love. Outside, dawn was breaking over the facility, another day of miracles beginning. He rose, ready to meet it, knowing that Scout, Bella, and Duke were still with him, would always be with him, in every dog saved, every veteran healed, every connection made. The 3 German shepherds who had cried from a dark tunnel had become thousands of voices calling out hope. Their cry had become a song, a symphony of healing that would echo through generations. And it all started with a 5-year-old boy who heard their call and answered. The story that began in a tunnel during a storm had no real ending. It continued in every wag of a tail, every veteran's smile, every moment when human and animal recognized in each other the capacity for unconditional love. This was the gift of the 3 guardians. This was their eternal watch. This was their promise, kept forever. No one stands alone. No one is forgotten. Love always finds a way. And in that truth, in that promise, in that endless circle of service and love, the guardians lived on, forever watching, forever serving, forever home. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the power of the bond between humans and animals, if you believe in the healing that comes from unconditional love, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from, and share your own stories of the animals who've changed your lives. Together, we can spread this message of hope, healing, and the eternal bond between guardians and those they protect. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey.